everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Green Jeans. I'm your one co-host, Annika Van Rossum, using pronouns she, her. And usually this is where my other co-host, Maya Van Rossum, chimes in, but you're actually going to be hearing from her in a little bit because we are going to be playing for you this really awesome segment from what we just celebrated was our second annual National Green Amendment Day. So there's this really exciting portion of the event, if you didn't get to tune in, where you'll get to hear some pearls of wisdom about why the Green Amendment movement is so important, especially in light of the recent SCOTUS decision of West Virginia versus EPA. And also you'll get to hear from a lot of people that are like on the ground in our movement, from attorneys to activists to just educators, like people every day who have been involved integrally in this movement and who see the power of it. And they'll tell you why they think it's so important and why they're involved in it. And probably why you should get involved too if you're not. But yeah, I'm really excited for you guys to listen in on, and I think you will find it so thrilling. And frankly, I know the world is kind of a little scary right now, but this is a movement that I think has so much power behind it, especially in light of SCOTUS trying to take away so many things that we find so fundamental and integrally important to ourselves, to our bodies, to our environment. The Green Amendment is really something when you put the right to breathe clean air, the right to enjoy clean waters, the right to a healthy environment for future generations in the Bill of Rights, it is so protected. It is so strong that it is not like anything we have ever seen before in this country when it comes to the environment. And I really believe in it. Will take this moment to say I am so incredibly proud of my mother for championing this movement and really taking it and going forward with it. And I'm also so incredibly proud of everybody who has seen the power in this and joined us in this fight. And it really goes from everyday people who are just involved in their community and going to township meetings, people making their monthly donations, people just talking about it in their classrooms, professors who are now teaching the topic. I just think this is a movement like we've never seen before, and everybody has their place and their space in it. And so I really encourage you to get on board if you haven't yet. I encourage you to share it. Yeah, I mean, it's crazy that you literally don't have a right to breathe clean air. You don't have a right to enjoy pure waters. The children that are currently on this planet don't have a right to inherit a healthy environment. Just doesn't make sense to me. But that's why this movement is so inspiring, so wonderful. And so I won't keep you any longer. And I really hope you enjoy this segment from National Green Amendment Day. And if you didn't get to tune in this year, mark it on your calendars for next year.
Welcome everybody to National Green Amendment Day. It's so exciting to see how many people are truly interested in the transformational change that constitutional green amendments can bring for environmental protection. We had over 200 people sign up for this evening's program, which is really super exciting. As you all know, tonight we're going to be exploring how constitutional green amendments transform environmental rights from rhetoric to reality. If you don't know me yet, my name's Maya Van Rossum. I'm the author of the book, The Green Amendment. I'm also the founder of the National Green Amendments for the Generations movement and organization. And I've had the honor for the last 30 years of serving as the Delaware Riverkeeper and leader of the 4-state organization, the Delaware Riverkeeper Network. It is as a result of that nearly 30 years of engaging in environmental activism and being an environmental attorney that I, like so many of you, I'm sure, have come to recognize that a stronger path is needed here in the United States of America if we are to provide the environmental protection and true environmental justice that communities across our nation need. This truth has been emphasized for the environment and for many areas of social justice by the recent set of Supreme Court decisions that have been handed down. Over recent weeks, we've seen some pretty dramatic decisions come out of the US Supreme Court. Decisions with regards to women's rights, gun control, Native American tribal sovereignty, Miranda rights, and the ability of federal agencies to address the climate crisis. These decisions will have and already are having dramatic consequences for the health and safety of present and future generations across our nation. In the environmental context, these decisions are helping to solidify the importance of advancing a constitutional Green Amendment strategy for environmental protection. Among the things that the court made clear in this recent set of decisions was that it's going to be looking for opportunities to hamper progress when it comes to environmental protection at the federal level, particularly protections essential for averting the worst of the climate crisis. It also made clear that legal precedents no longer carry weight, at least not with the US Supreme Court. And if the US Supreme Court has the mindset that they can ignore legal precedent, we can be assured that other courts and justices in the federal and state court system will have the mind that they too can ignore legal precedent. And in this recent set of decisions, it was made very clear that only when the Constitution explicitly and clearly recognizes and protects a right will it be guaranteed respect in the courts. Now, in the environmental realm, a Green Amendment is that clear constitutional expression of rights needed to ensure critical environmental protections cannot be disregarded by the courts or by government officials. A Green Amendment is a clear and explicit recognition of the rights of all people to a clean, safe, and healthy environment. It creates a clear obligation on government to protect these rights equitably across communities. And it creates an obligation to protect the environment, not just for the near term, but for the long term as well, so that we are protecting the rights of future generations. States that have Green Amendments have shown how powerful their protections can be. While constitutional change is certainly a high hurdle, state Green Amendments are accessible. We prove that by getting a Green Amendment passed in the state of New York just last year. And we've also been proving that with the amazing progress we've been making in other states where we have Green Amendment proposals advancing. States like Maine, New Mexico, Hawaii, Delaware, New Jersey, and beyond. Now, a Green Amendment is not just any language about the environment in a constitution. Anybody who's heard me give my talks has probably seen this slide and heard me say that. A Green Amendment is language that actually fulfills explicit criteria and as a result gives environmental rights highest constitutional recognition. The fact is that while almost every state talks about the environment in their constitutions, only 3 states, Pennsylvania, Montana, and New York, actually have constitutional Green Amendments. Now, we know these specific Green Amendment criteria are important because in the states where constitutional language fulfills the criteria, environmental rights are increasingly given the same respect as other fundamental rights, things like free speech and private property rights. And in the Green Amendment states, we are also really getting meaningful and protective environmental decisions out of the courts, particularly in Pennsylvania and Montana, who have had Green Amendments for several years now. And we're expecting similar good outcomes in the state of New York now that it also has a Green Amendment. In the states where their language does not meet the Green Amendment criteria, courts have been unwilling to give environmental rights the same highest standing and protection as other fundamental rights. And they've continued to leave it to the legislature and the vagaries of our US political system to decide to what degree to protect the natural resources of their state and the environmental rights of the people. So let's review. What are these key elements of a constitutional Green Amendment? What are those specific criteria? Well, first off, the language has to be placed in the Bill of Rights section of the Constitution. That's where we place the other human, civil, and political rights we hold dear. If we want Green Amendments to have the same most powerful constitutional and legal standing, they also have to be in the Bill of Rights. We need language that is clear that we are protecting the rights of all people to essential aspects of the environment, things like clean water and clean air, a stable climate, healthy flora, fauna, ecosystems, and environments. We also want to be clear that we're protecting other essential qualities of the environment that really enrich and protect our communities. The natural, the cultural, the human health, the scenic qualities and values of the environment. We need to make sure that our Green Amendment language applies to all government officials at every level of government, not just the state legislature. And the Green Amendment needs to create an obligation on all government officials to protect the natural resources of the state for the benefit of all people, not just present generations, but also the future generations yet to come. And the language needs to be self-executing. The amendment itself needs to be self-executing, meaning it has legal power, vigor, and enforceability in its own right. It is not just purely defined by the state's legislature. When we fulfill these criteria in our constitutional environmental rights language, when we fulfill the criteria of a Green Amendment, we turn environmental rights from an aspirational goal that we hold in our hearts and we aspire to achieve, we transform it into an enforceable mandate that all government officials must carry out. And when they don't, that we, the people, can take into the courts and actually force them to comply with. Constitutional Green Amendments are making a difference in the states where they exist. They're strengthening the law and they're empowering people. In the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, when a very excruciating pro-fracking law was passed by the Pennsylvania legislature, we were able to get the most devastating provisions of that law declared unconstitutional, and as a result, prevented the exponential expansion of the industry in the Commonwealth. In the state of Montana, their Green Amendment has been used to protect critical environments, ecosystems, and communities from the devastating consequences of industrial gold mining operations. In Pennsylvania, where there existed a long ignored toxic site super saturated with dangerous toxins that was being ignored by government officials and no action was being taken to secure its cleanup, the Green Amendment has forced government officials to start to act to ensure full, fair, appropriate cleanup of this site by the responsible parties. And Green Amendments are being used increasingly at the local level too, with state government officials really taking seriously their obligation to protect the natural resources and the environmental rights of their communities. So they're using Green Amendments to accomplish all kinds of wonderful things, including protecting the critical ecosystems that are important to their communities. The Green Amendment movement is a national movement, but it is a movement that is advancing with state leadership first. We're getting Green Amendments in state after state after state, and eventually when we reach the critical tipping point, we will seek and secure the passage of a federal Green Amendment, because we need Green Amendments at both levels, at the federal level and at the state level, to ensure that all government officials are held accountable for protecting the environmental rights and the natural resources of all of our states and the United States of America. I am so honored to be joined this evening by 14 powerful activists and attorneys from across the nation who have been leaders in our growing national Green Amendment movement. They are going to join with me to share with you how Green Amendments truly can create transformational change in the context of real world examples and case studies advancing in communities across our nation right now. Look, we all know that we are entitled as people to clean water, clean air, a stable climate, and healthy environments. We all know that these are inalienable human rights that belong to us by virtue of the fact that we are people here on this earth. And that means we all know that we have a right to a constitutional Green Amendment in every state constitution across our nation, and ultimately at the federal level. So again, thank you so much for joining us on National Green Amendment Day 2022. I look forward to sharing the rest of the evening with you and learning how Green Amendments can transform environmental rights from rhetoric to reality. We just want to take our final few minutes to get some pearls of wisdom from a few of our experts. So we've selected 6 of them that are each going to give a few final pearls of wisdom to share with the group. First, we're going to hear from Eric Jantz, who's with the New Mexico Environmental Law Center and working on the Green Amendment in New Mexico.
Thank you, Maya. Hey everybody, my name is Eric Jantz. I'm Senior Staff Attorney at the New Mexico Environmental Law Center. We're one of the few nonprofit legal organizations in the country that focuses primarily on environmental justice issues, and the only one in New Mexico. In working on the Green Amendment in New Mexico, and talking about it with community folks in the communities that we work with here, the one thing that really stands out to me that's critically important about Green Amendment is that it represents a fundamental shift in power dynamics, right? So communities now really rely on regulatory agencies, environmental regulatory agencies, to protect their interests. I've heard so many times working with our communities, we thought the government was here to protect us. We thought the government was here to make sure that we had clean air to breathe, that clean water to drink, clean land to walk on, right? But regulatory agencies oftentimes are captured by the industries that they're supposed to regulate. And even when they're not, they're often underfunded and under-resourced. So even if they're well-meaning regulatory staffers, oftentimes those folks are hamstrung. My experience is that often the regulatory agencies are captured, and so we don't even get to that point of well-meaning staffers. But the Green Amendment fundamentally shifts that power and that agency from a state government actor to the people in the community. So frontline and fence line communities can use a Green Amendment to speak for themselves and promote their own interests in court without having to rely on technocrats, bureaucrats, and regulatory officials. So I think that in my view, is sort of the biggest takeaway. It puts the power of preserving environmental values, cultural values, back where it belongs, in the hands of the people.
Now you know why he's such a great attorney and advocate for the Green Amendment. Next, we are going to hear from Tracy Carluccio with the Delaware Riverkeeper Network, actually working on the Green Amendment throughout the 4 watershed states and key to our victory in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania that helped launch it all.
Thanks, Maya. So what I do day in and day out as an environmental advocate has shown me that communities work tirelessly to protect people and the environment from pollution and from industrial domination and bad government decisions. This is what we spend our days and often our nights doing. And often it's the failure of the very agencies charged with protecting our water and our air and climate that make our struggles the hardest. Why is this? Well, I found it's because special interests dominate how decisions are being made, and our environmental laws and regulations have been captured by those who want to exploit our environment, no matter if it's ruined in the process or people's lives are lost in the process. We need to take back control so that our environmental rights rule the day. The power of the Green Amendment is that it ensures that the right to clean air, pure water, and a healthy environment and a livable climate are recognized as inalienable constitutional rights. To me, this provides us with a more powerful platform, and we can insist then that government must do its job and ensure the special interests that put profits over people won't rule the day, won't have free reign like they do today. To reach a truly just society where all people equally, including future generations, realize their rights in the way that they actually live their lives, our Constitution and the government that implements that must be beholden to a Green Amendment. I don't know how we're going to get out of the mess that we're in unless we do that. So go for the Green Amendment. We as activists can make it happen, and then we'll throw it to the courts to make sure it doesn't go awry. Thanks, Maya.
Now you know why we have so many victories in the Delaware River watershed. Thank you, Tracy. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Terence Bankston with Clean Water Action, who is one of our leading champions in the state of New Jersey.
Oh my, Maya, thank you. You are a trailblazer, and thank you for your leadership. And let me just say this. Thank you to the white people for supporting this. And what I mean by that, I mean this to say that sometimes zip codes and area codes divide us. And I resent the fact as an EJ organizer, environmental justice organizer, for those that know what that means, that we have to have EJ communities. You know what that means? That means that there's disparity across our state, across our country. You know what that means? Majority of folks who are in charge and make decisions are white. And sometimes those of us in Black communities feel like you don't understand. It is so, it's not, it's Maya, you know the difference between being inspiring and empowering. I love the fact that we were able to get on this call. Thank you for your leadership again, and say that regardless of our zip codes, regardless of our color, regardless of our area codes, we are able to relate on one issue. And this issue is that everybody deserves clean air and clean water, but it goes beyond that. And so I want to thank everybody on this call for caring, because what you may be experiencing in one zip code or area code with a warehouse is nothing compared to the overburdened communities that are just more overburdened. Oh my. And there's no merit to that. I learned a few years ago that you can't legislate morality, right? You can put things into law, but people are people. And so the people who are on this call represent leadership that I am inspired, not just inspired by, but empowered by. You give me the ability and the authority to stand up and fight for my community and make real change. And so this movement is about, three of the favorite things that this would do is about the empowerment of environmental justice communities to address unconstitutional issues, meaning we've been new that this was a part of social justice. We've been new that environmental justice was a part of civil rights. Come on, how can it not be? And so somehow it's just starting to become, thanks to organizations like this, a part of the daily narrative when we talk about crime in our communities and trash being picked up. When we talk about those basic things that's considered basic, we have to include environmental justice issues. We have to care about the water we drink and that wash our bodies. We have to care about the air that we breathe. When the majority of our students, our children, our babies, miss school because of asthma. But then we complain about something else that's involved under social justice, the lack of health insurance. So you can't treat the problem properly. There's a disparity with that. And then you have to live in an environment when you're constantly being dumped on. So come on, this is what we need to do. It's not just the right thing to do, it's past time to do it, And so then it goes on to the next one. It says mandate government loyalty. Come on, loyalty and respect. Loyalty is something we're entitled to from our government because we hire them, they work for us. And don't ever get that confused. Stop treating elected officials like they're royalty. Treat them like they work for you. They are your employees. If I dare you all to look at the seal of any bill or the seal of any letter that comes to you from your government, I bet the seal is first. The seal represents, before the mayor's name, before the president's name, the seal represents what, Maya? The people. And so you got to understand that there is power in people. And then I love that it says that it fills the gap, because that's a part of what we're doing. There's this and there's that, and they distract us with the this and the that. We want the in-between. We don't want the cherry on top of the cake. We like that too. We don't want just the icing. We want the cake too. We want the cake, the icing, and the cherry on top. And so it talks about filling the gap. And so that's what the NJ Green Amendment is about and why it's so important. And thank you, Maya, for leading the charge on having the Second Amendment. I also encourage everyone who has eyes to read or ear to listen to check out Maya's book, because it really does explain this in many different ways. And again, Maya, thank you for your leadership. I thank you all for bringing on this call.
Thank you, Terence, for your leadership. Now you know why half the New Jersey State Legislature has signed on as a co-sponsor of the New Jersey Green Amendment. Imagine saying no to Terence after he's come and advocated you to be a sponsor. So thank you, Terence, for your amazing leadership and inspiring so many people in New Jersey to come on board with our Green Amendment. Next, we are going to hear from Todd Oman. He's the director of the PACE Environmental Litigation Clinic, and he is now currently our powerhouse for taking the New York Green Amendment, taking the New York Green Amendment and giving it legal power and life. So we're getting more good precedents to build upon.
Hey, so that tough act to follow. All right. So I had one plan. I'm gonna go with a different direction then on my words of wisdom. So I think what I would say is remember what your Green Amendment is and what it is not. We have to be judicious in how we apply it and when we apply it, because if it starts becoming a tag-on claim to every case that's brought, it's going to lose all meaning and the courts are going to disregard it and ignore it. So the first thing would be to say is treat it with respect and use it where it fits and use it, with great advocacy and sincerity. It cannot be just an add-on for every single slight that somebody feels. And that's the only way it's going to have any value in the courts, is if the courts see it as something like free speech. If they see it as something that is protected and respected within the Constitution. And the second part of that is keep in mind it's a constitutional limitation. It's a constitutional provision. It protects the people from the government. It is not to protect people from other private actors. So the key, if you're going to litigate it, is look for where the government intersects with your issue. Where is the government involved? And it's not as limited as people think. There are many, many layers in which the government gets involved: in permitting an operation, in approving a site plan for an operation, in issuing permits for outfalls, in issuing permits for air, if we're doing environmental review like NEPA or a state equivalent of NEPA. There are many, many, many layers where the government is involved in approving or allowing an action to happen, where you can take an action with something like a Green Amendment and get involved in every single one of those layers and advocate at every single one of those layers and make sure that the rights are respected at each of those layers. If you wait until the very end and only, when the problem is at its worst, you might have missed many opportunities to enforce and advocate for your environmental rights along the way. So be aware of and pay attention to everywhere where government is involved in approving or allowing an action to go forward, and think about ways in which you can advocate in each of those situations.
The most important thing about a Green Amendment is to make sure once we get them that they're used properly. And Todd is key to making sure that is happening in the state of New York. I can't speak any more about how important and powerful Todd's role is right now in New York, and again, getting that powerful precedent. Thank you, Todd. Next, we're going to have Casey Manahan, senior attorney at the Delaware Riverkeeper Network, who is also in the Delaware River watershed states, notably Pennsylvania, leading the charge in terms of litigation with Pennsylvania's Green Amendment.
Thank you, Maya, and thank you everyone for joining us today. I just wanted to take my moment to talk briefly about the intergenerational aspect of the Green Amendment. And how that can affect government decision making, and how these types of issues are framed. I think, as Maya said earlier, a lot of times these decisions that affect the environment directly and almost permanently are often made according to the political vagaries of the day, right? What people want now and what they believe is warranted at this moment. But what a Green Amendment does, it imposes an intergenerational aspect by citing to the future generations and the rights of future generations. And we saw that recently in Pennsylvania come up in a Supreme Court case, the PEDF 4 case. And that is the intergenerational aspect is especially relevant in decision making because it removes the distortion that currently exists, and it requires the government to think about how is the decision I'm making today going to burden the right holders in the future. That's very relevant with climate change, with contamination from chemicals that may be long lasting in the environment. And there's also the intergenerational element of the use of fossil fuels. When the government is making choices that depend on fossil fuels, it may be, they may have reasons for their own non-environmental reasons for wanting to use those today, but they need to think of the environmental reasons why tomorrow that might be a bad idea. And also in terms of distorting governmental decision making, that also happens in the context of so-called sacrifice zones. The government sees it as these sacrifice zones as a kind of abyss that environmental impacts are just tossed into, because it's an already degraded area. And what a Green Amendment does is forces the government to realize from the perspective of the people who live in that area that their rights are being violated, that their access to clean air, or their ability to breathe clean air, drink pure water, is being burdened in a way that would be unacceptable in any other area of the state. So these are just really important ways that the government decision-making is affected by a Green Amendment, which is important to remember is a limitation on the government's ability to act contrary to the people's rights.
So I always say to people, if you want to be inspired about the transformational power of a Green Amendment, read the Act 13 victory that we secured back in 2013. And I more and more add to it. If you really want to be inspired about how the Green Amendment precedent is building, you've got to read one of Casey's briefs, because they are incredible and compelling and really make the case. She is making sure that our precedent is moving forward, not just staying stagnant. Thank you, Casey. And to close out our evening's program is going to be our most powerful voice in the state of Delaware, Carrie Evelyn Harris with the Mid-Atlantic Justice Coalition. She has been leading the charge to get a constitutional Green Amendment in Delaware. She's a powerful environmental justice leader. She's a powerful political leader, and I know she's going to inspire us all.
No pressure, no pressure. Again, thank you all for joining. I imagine if you're on here, you're moved to help people, and you find yourself in a situation where more likely than not, you wish you could save most people you run into, if not all of them. But you also have limitations, right? Bandwidth, and all of us are talking about bandwidth on a regular basis now. And you want to know the way to be able to create change that is positive and long lasting, right? And defensible. The Green Amendment is that answer. I recently was watching a movie called Minamata. It's about the mercury poisoning issue that happened in Japan in the 70s. And the main character makes this comment, and I'm not quoting perfectly because I'm not one of those people that can perfectly quote movies, but it says, Native Americans believe that if you take a picture of them, you take a piece of their soul. And then he says, but the fine print that everyone misses is that the photographer loses a piece of their soul too. We're all the photographers. We all have a piece of our soul taken every time we hear about injustices in our communities, in our states, in our nation, in our world. And we tirelessly work to try to fix that, to fill those holes. I wager that the Green Amendment is that way. It's our way to create sustainable change that creates a place for justice and heals a lot of brokenness that we feel in our country, where we are constantly talking about the left versus the right, GOP versus the Dems, Black versus white. This is something we can all get behind, because we can never build a wall high enough or dig a hole deep enough to escape what pollution does to all of us. I often say that the best way to create systemic change is to move the community. That's why I'm big on moving communities. But how do you move communities if you don't give them the full picture? So I have this theory of change called hearts, minds, and pockets. You can say to someone who is a heart person, one baby's going to die and they're on board and they want to do it. You could say to a person who's moved by their minds. Well, this kid's dying. They're like, that's so sad. But what's the plan? What's the plan? And then there's this third person who is going to say, I'm sorry about the kid. Yeah, there's a great plan, but what's it going to cost me? Or what's it going to save me? The Green Amendment answers all of those questions. We save the babies and ourselves and our parents. We have a plan on how to implement and use the Green Amendment to create a greater future for ourselves. And what does it save us? In the state of Delaware alone, it costs the average family an additional $2,500 a year in healthcare costs because of the pollution in our state. 97% of our waterways are polluted, and we depend on tourism to fund our schools, fix our roadways, fund our judicial system. Pockets are impacted every single day. The Green Amendment fixes all of this, or at least has the ability to start moving us in the right direction. So when we talk about how do we fill those holes that person was talking about, that is taken with the pictures of ourselves or the pictures of our community members, we fill it by creating change through the Green Amendment. We fill it by saying we individually can't help everyone, but collectively we can pass Green Amendments across this nation to create a more stable United States of America that is more connected, because we fought for something and won something together, and we remember that that is truly the American spirit. And so I urge you all, if you aren't already involved in this fight, to please get involved. If you're not already pushing for an amendment in your own state constitution, to reach out to Maya and start one. And if you feel like that you don't know exactly how to move forward, Maya can get you connected, or you can connect with another state that might be a sister state, to start moving and just feeling what it's like to connect your community as a whole. And let's create the nation that we all have always hoped to be, that we would live in. Thank you.
And now you know why we have and need a Green Amendment movement. Thank you, Carrie, for those powerful words and your powerful leadership in the state and nationwide on this incredibly important issue.
So I really hope you enjoyed listening to all those amazing stories and perspectives, and I hope you took away some of your own pearls of wisdom. I hope you feel inspired to go out and join this movement. Again, always as a reminder, the second edition of the Green Amendment book will be coming out this fall. You can check the link right below in the description that will tell you how you can pre-order the book. It's a great gift for anybody, your favorite little tree hugger, somebody you're trying to inspire, maybe somebody who you want to be an environmental activist who just isn't quite there yet. And also too, if you enjoy what we do on this podcast, there's a little donation link at the bottom. Feel free to click that as well. And I just really thank you guys for tuning in. We have a lot of fun doing this podcast. And if you haven't heard me say it yet, I always say to people, most people don't get to meet their heroes, but I call mine Mom. And I'm just so thankful to have her in my life and inspiring everything that I do. And I just think she's a one of a kind person, frankly, who puts literally everybody and the entire planet before herself. So little sentimental moment for me, because she's not here to stop me from just like singing her praises. But again, I also believe too that everybody has the ability to change the world, whether it's just changing something in your community, making your home more eco-friendly. Every little bit counts. And you can also, make an even bigger impact by joining the Green Amendment movement. So I really hope you enjoy what we do here, and I wish you the best of luck in changing the world and making it a better place. Because if you're listening to this podcast, you're already somebody that cares about the planet and other people, and that's really wonderful. So thank you for joining, and until next time.